Hi, SmartPak fans. I'm SmartPaker Dan. She's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we are here to answer your horse health questions asked and voted on by you. Now, we got a ton of great questions for this month.
We did, yeah.
I know there's a couple that we were rooting for.
Yeah, some made it and some didn't.
I know. But unfortunately, we can only answer 5, but that doesn't mean, just because it wasn't asked this month, doesn't mean you can't ask it again next month.
Right.
I would recommend, though, asking your barn mates, family, friends, the person who serves you coffee in the morning to vote for your video.
Barista, right?
Yes,
Barista?
exactly.
Yeah.
To vote for your video, your question when the poll gets asked. But speaking of great questions, do you remember Jessica from last month?
Sure.
Who asked a question about the white spots on her sorrel horse?
Yes, the bird catcher spots.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So she actually sent us a photo of her horse.
That's so sweet.
I know, after she submitted the question.
Great.
So just want to let all of you know that if you actually have a photo of the question you want to ask, we would love to see it.
That would be awesome, yeah.
And we can't make promises, but we might be able to include your horse's photo in the video.
What?
They can be just as famous as Newman.
Oh my goodness.
So make sure you get on those and we ask for questions right away for us.
Cool.
But on to our questions for this month.
You got it.
So question number 1 was asked by Sophia Giaforti on Instagram. And Sophia wants to know, how can I tell if my girth or saddle is causing discomfort to my horse?
Well, you are fortunate because I recently attended the 2018 NEAEP, which stands for Northeast Association of Equine Practitioners. And Dr. Sue Dyson, who's from the UK, she's a world-renowned sports medicine veterinarian and saddle fitting expert, gave not only a lecture but a wet lab, so a hands-on demonstration, and we got to participate and feel things. She had us run through looking at a saddle and checking the symmetry of the panels underneath. We checked the points of the tree. We put the saddle on and then felt underneath the panel all the way from the withers to the back to make sure there was even pressure, no bridging. We measured the length of the saddle with T18, or the last rib.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Scientific
you guys
stuff
really...
here. We looked how the billets hang, like they should hang vertical and not with a forward lean or a backward lean. And then the gullet, which is the open space on the top of the saddle, where the saddle fits on the horse's back, that should be about 4 fingers wide, and they were 4 man fingers wide. So, yeah.
So you would slide your fingers, 4 fingers
Well, you can
underneath.
just look at the saddle, like put it on your legs, and then if you can put 4 fingers between the 2 panels in the gullet, then it's wide. But some of them are very narrow, and those lay on the spine of the horse, and so those would not be appropriate. Those would cause problems right away. But she had a great quote. She said, "It's not rocket science if your fingers get jammed just too tight." And we're all like, oh, great. So some red flags for pressure points on the saddle, or signs of an ill-fitting saddle, which is what she asked, is abnormal hair wear. Areas where the hair coat becomes wavy or ruffled, like after you ride, you take it off, and the hair has been rubbed sort of sideways or forward. That means the saddle's moving.
Okay.
So that's a sign. Dry spots within the sweaty spot. So if you look where the sweat pattern is on the horse, and then all of a sudden there's a little area of dry, that indicates that there's localized pressure that's heavy enough to press hard enough to keep the follicles from sweating.
Oh, okay.
So that's a focal point. There can even be focal swellings under the saddle. So when you take the saddle off, there could be an area that's raised and elevated in edematous because of the saddle didn't fit right.
Okay.
So
are there certain
those
areas you should be looking more concerned about to see those?
Not really. I mean, anywhere the saddle contacts the horse's back, you should be observing for these things. Now, there's also signs, like behavioral signs, right?
Yes.
And performance signs. She's doing there's a paper out about every year, and I've got some titles of some that are really good, and we'll share those at the end. But she's created what's called an ethogram. An ethogram is a list or a table of behaviors or activities that horses or animals, in this case horses, do to demonstrate, in this case, lameness, but some of them she's beginning to tie specifically to saddle fit. Now, I'm just going to read them all, and again, these right now it's not saddle fit specifically, but it's musculoskeletal lameness, but it's ears back for more than 5 seconds, mouth opening for more than 10 seconds, tongue out, change in eye posture and expression. She calls it an intense stare.
What?
Just looking at one thing and
Just
not
blankly.
like a soft eye. You know, when you're like, people have done that. Okay, going above the bit, head tossing, head tilting, unwillingness just to go forward, crookedness, hurrying, changing or breaking gait spontaneously, poor quality canter. So this could be crooked, changing, like swapping leads, breaking, also resisting and stumbling and toe dragging.
Okay, so these aren't all just related to saddle fit.
Their lameness, their
Yeah.
signs of pain. Some of them, she's beginning to say, when I take away the pain, like they block a horse during a lameness exam, and some of these go away and some remain. The ones that remain tend to be associated with saddle fit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know as you're reading some of those, I was like, there's a couple horses who just popped into my brain, and I'm sure for most of you at home too.
Yeah. So in our wet lab, we got to put a saddle on a horse, assess the fit with the points I told you earlier, and then we watch the horse go, and we would look at the length of stride and how comfortable the horse was and how much he used his back and if he rounded and went on the bit. And then we would change the saddle and see how differently the horse moved. And so just in the difference of a saddle, same rider, same bit, same footing, the horse went markedly different just because of the saddle fit,
So
because
it's like
it gave
this-
them more freedom of shoulder movement, let's say.
Yeah, so if the saddle's like sitting too tight on the withers or compressing their shoulder too much, it's
Yeah.
going to impact how
Yeah,
much they can.
or it's rocking, or it's slipping from side to side, or it's you know, you can look at the where this rider sits and the saddle can be leaned back or leaned forward. It should be level. So all those kinds of things affect. She also made a point of saying, and that's why we have these, that the girth is very important too, as is the saddle pad.
Okay.
So her warning about the saddle pad is make sure that when you saddle up, pull that pad up in the gullet of the pommel.
So it's not pressing down.
Exactly, because she said the pad itself, just material, can cause enough pressure on the withers to make the horse sore.
Just that thin little pad?
Yep. And then as far as girths, so this one is the Prestige Anatomic. This, like if the horse was towards you and the back end was here, this is the front, and it provides a little shoulder and elbow relief, and those are the two. Those are the areas that horses need some relief in. So this is a popular girth. And then she also made a point of saying, if you get a girth with elastic, make sure it has elastic on both ends like this one, because if you have a girth with elastic just on one end, you can imagine that it pulls differently.
It's going to have more pull on one side versus another.
So if you're going to have elastic, it's got to be equal to equilibrate those forces. So it was a very interesting wet lab.
And we're seeing a lot more of these like ergonomic designs.
Correct.
In a lot of tack now, one with girths, and of course also now with bridles and things like that to
Yeah.
provide more comfort and movement for
Well, and the
horses.
thing with them is, just because it's labeled ergonomic or it says it's designed to do something, it may not do that in your horse. So you have to read your horse's ethogram, and if you put a girth on and you have ears back and he won't go and he's crooked and he's hurrying, he's rushing, maybe that's not the girth for your horse. Try a different girth, and then your horse will tell you, oh, I like that girth better. And it might not be an anatomic girth. It might be a regular just girth, but he likes that better. So then you just got to do what he likes.
It's been my experience, the more expensive it is, the more my horse likes it.
That's true.
But I will say, with saddle fitting, obviously it can be super challenging to try and find the right fit. We do have our test ride program here at SmartPak.
That's right.
So you can always have a saddle, have it sent out. You can ride in it like you would your normal saddle. Have your vet, farrier, trainer look at it to make sure it's a good fit. And then if it works or doesn't work, you can just send it right back to us.
Right. The other thing she pointed out was, if you have a saddle that can be flocked, then I assumed I had a saddle sort of from Custom Saddle, where I had the Wolfgang Solo
Yes.
that we sell. Okay, and it was fitted to Newman. I'm like, great, it's all done. And she said, no, horses' backs change in a ride, but certainly seasonally. So coming out of winter, they might have lost some top line, and they have a shape. And so you need it restuffed then, or looked at least looked at by a competent saddle fitter. And then after the show season and you've clinicked and lesson, you're going into winter when their top line is probably the biggest it's going to be, needs to be refitted. And so she's like, have it done at least twice a year, if not 4 times. And I went, oops, my bad, because I didn't.
But that's a great point. I didn't even think about that during how much in shape they are during seasons. That's a great
Their back
point.
changes, yep.
Well, hopefully that was helpful for you, Sophia. So question number 2 was submitted by Megan via our form at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. And Megan wants to know, what type of fencing is best for 24/7 turnout, i.e. electric tape, rope, barbed wire, no climb, wooden, etc. Thank you. I absolutely love your videos and look forward to them each month. And she even put little heart emojis for you.
Nice. Or for you. So you can probably pick out of her list which one is I'm not going to approve. It begins with a B.
I was going to say, I'm assuming the barbed wire was probably not going to be.
Knock out the barbed wire. The other ones that are not, we're told to avoid for horses are like the high tensile steel wire, because it's not very visible, and it can act like a knife if they run into it at speed. I mean, it just cuts through flesh and bone. It's really awful if you've ever seen one of those. And then the other one is, it's called Page mesh wire. It's the wire that is about 3 to 4 inches square.
Okay.
And it's just the right size for a hoof and leg to go through, but not come back out.
Yeah.
So you want to avoid any kind of fence that can trap a hoof or a head. Some fences, they require like a cross piece, and that's an area where a horse can stick a head in. Horses, I mean, that's what they do, right?
They are very creative.
They challenge everything, and so those are the 3 that I would avoid. So that leaves us with a lot of other ones. And I found this quote that there is no best fence, right?
Okay.
There's things we look for, and she specifically said 24/7 turnout.
Yes.
So she wants a pasture fence night and day, so it has to be highly visible. It has to be strong. We use the word secure, and we mean secure enough to hold the horse in if they hit it.
Okay.
And they could hit it just because they didn't see that it was there. They could hit it because they were bouncing around and playing and romping. They could hit it because they spooked and ran. So
we've all seen that.
We've all seen that. So it has to be durable and strong, but also forgiving and have some give. No hazardousness to it, we talk about the trapping, but no sharp edges or points.
Because you want, I guess, at some point, if the horse does happen to get stuck, you want it to be able to come undone in a sense, or at least be able to get them out of it.
Or they could bounce off it. So
yes.
there's wood rail. There's vinyl rail with the high tensile steel in it, which is a very popular form of fence because it's visible, it's strong, and it has some give. You can a little bit bounce off it. So that
poor Newman's just out there bouncing off fences.
Oh no, he doesn't touch fences. There's vinyl rail, which I don't consider horse fence, only because it's the PVC material, but it's hollow. Do you know what I'm talking
yes.
about? It's more decorative. It's what they use around like dressage rings and stuff. And in the cold, it can shatter and make sharp edges. And if a horse hits it, it's going to break.
So more for maybe for like riding rings, not so much for like turnout.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons for fences on a horse property. There's the perimeter or the outside fence, which is used to, if you get a loose horse from the regular fence, keep them in, but it also keeps out unwanted visitors, dogs, wildlife,
people who are driving by and see a barn
you know,
and they want to stop in.
Yeah, whatever. So what other ones are? Electric. Okay,
yeah.
So electric is not usually a fence that you use by itself, but you use it in combination with something. Like you might put it as the top strand on a fence, because one of the things you have to consider in fencing is that it's not just about the horse, keeping him in an area, keeping him away from other horses. It's protecting the fence from the horse at times, yeah, because they chew on them, they paw on them, they scratch on them. I mean, the fences are
multi-purposeful toy.
That's right. And then I think she mentioned there is wire mesh that is horse appropriate, and one brand is the No Climb, and then there's the V mesh. So those are very, very small. They're very sturdy. They do have some give. I see a lot of times people will put a top wood rail on top of them because they're not super visible, but if you put a board on it, then they're easier to see.
That's a good point, because I was going to say I've seen a couple of them and it is a little bit hard.
Very hard to see, but you can enhance the visibility pretty easily. But other things they have to take into account are the initial purchase price, and then how easy are these to maintain. Like the wood fencing, the 3 or 4 board post and rail, very pretty. It's very traditional in some places, but it takes a lot to maintain it. So you have you're all in when that. Yeah, they love the wood and the painting and that. So there's a lot of things to consider. I recommend going to farms, seeing what they have, talking to the people, saying, if you had to do this all over again, how would you do it? And you might get some really helpful answers.
Yeah, use the resources you have available in your
before
community.
you start putting money into it,
I always think it's so funny with fencing and horses and turnout. No matter how big of the turnout it is, they will roll as close to that fence as possible and give me a heart attack every single time. But those are some great tips for Megan for sure. So question number 3 was actually asked by Megan again. This time she asked on YouTube, so she's taking advantage of all our platforms here. So this time, Megan wants to know, which do you prefer for an adult horse who lives on 24/7, lives outside 24/7 with unlimited access to good quality hay and no grain, a multivitamin or multi-purpose supplement? What exactly is the difference? If a horse is on a multivitamin, will it even need a multi-purpose supplement? This horse is mostly used for lessons/pleasure riding. And she also said again, thank you. By the way, love the videos. Megan's
Did they get a heart emoji this time?
No heart emoji this time. There was a little smiley face this time, though.
All right. Those are some great questions. And I want to jump right to what is the difference between a multivitamin and a multi-purpose. If you could grab that one. Careful, it's really heavy. So this is an example of a multivitamin mineral supplement. And it is designed to bridge the gap between what the NRC nutrient requirements of horses says your horse needs on a daily basis and what is being supplied in the high quality pasture hay that your horse is getting. If your horse is in light work and a trail ridden pleasure,
just doing some lessons and doing pleasure riding,
then and your forage has a good enough protein, amino acids in it, this might be all your horse needs. It's got vitamins A, D, E, K, and B vitamins, and minerals like the macro minerals, the calcium, the phosphorus, and the magnesium, but also the micro minerals like copper, zinc, and manganese in those. And so it just makes sure that the hay and the pasture, which might be deficient in minerals and vitamins, you're bringing your horse's nutrition plane up to that level that the NRC says. A multi-purpose, on the other hand, is completely different. We call these combination supplements, combos, sometimes all in one. And it's really more of a rider convenience factor, because we find that people feed joint, hoof, skin and coat, digestion, probably the most popular categories. And rather than having 4 different supplements, which can take up quite a few wells in a SmartPak, if you take the active ingredients from those categories and put them in one base that you can make a pellet with, then the volume is smaller and the price is lower, and
which
it's
love.
and it's just more convenient. So a multi-purpose isn't to bridge nutritional gaps; it's to provide support to your horse in some key areas, like we talked about the joint and the hoof and the skin and coat. And so those are just the 4 that most people like to provide together. Now, if your horse is at again, light work and not doing a lot, you might be able to get by with sort of the base combo supplement. But if your horse is in heavier work or has some competing or has some special needs, like maybe his feet aren't that great, then a higher level of a combo would have higher levels of the actives, as well as a higher range. Like some of the combos have not just joint, but joint and soft tissue support.
Yes, which is very important, especially if you're going to do something like jumping.
So a multivitamin, you do this to round out their nutrition, and then the multi-purpose, you say, what needs does my horse, what do I want to target? What systems?
So multivitamin is what the horse needs for life.
Yes.
Just general nutrients that they would need for life.
Blinking and breathing and all that,
And then multi-purpose, we're going to focus in more targeted support for your horse, whether it be joint, gastric, digestive, all combined together in one.
So people do feed these together. Like you wouldn't feed 2 multivitamin minerals, but you might feed a multivitamin mineral supplement and a multi-purpose. That's totally fine. That's not over-supplementing because it's supporting 2 completely different
So that's good because
areas.
she did mention, she said if a horse is on a multivitamin, would it even need a multi-purpose?
So yes. Look at me answer questions. I didn't need that. Yeah. So different categories completely.
Okay, perfect. All right, so on to question number 4. This one was submitted by Ashley on the Ask the Vet forum. And Ashley said, I have a 2-year-old quarter horse mare that has a club foot. What is a club foot? How do horses develop a club foot? What will this look like for the mare's future? I'm working with my vet and farrier, but what else can I do to properly manage this? We actually did have a couple of comments on our community board on YouTube.
Yep.
So Kayla wants to know, or said, I have a mare with 2 club feet. It's really very manageable with the right care, but I feel as though many people are still very confused by the idea.
That's helpful.
And then Donna said, I sincerely want to know the answer. Apparently Donna is experiencing this. I've seen a lot of videos on hoof care and how the farrier trims and cares for a horse, but I've never heard of a club foot in horses.
Oh, all right. Well, you came to the right place. So I want to make sure I got this right, and I asked Danvers Child, our hoof health consultant.
Our go-to.
To help me on this. So this is what he wrote. There are numerous definitions of club foot, which may be why there's some confusion, but the simple fact is that a club foot is overly upright, or steep is one way of saying it.
Okay.
Whether the condition is genetic or acquired, so present at birth or developed later in life, it places excess stress on the bony column of the limb and creates alignment issues. While the condition often doesn't cause immediate lameness or acute lameness, it does affect gait and movement, and it generally tends to shorten a horse's useful career and comfort. So he says, for this person specifically, you're on the right track by having a vet farrier team working on this because it does require a team. Club feet are graded from a mild, that's a grade 1, to a severe grade 4. So the first step for your team is to determine what grade or severity they're working with.
Okay. And that's what your vet would decide?
With the farrier.
Farrier.
They use the same scale so that they can talk apples to apples. Yeah. And they can consult with other people and show radiographs. If it's a 1 or 2, so that's on the mild side, they'll likely opt for management. And that's the farrier keeping a tighter schedule than usual, like we say 5 to 6 weeks maybe. So it might be 3 to 4 weeks or even 2 weeks. Working to ensure that ratios and angles are maintained and avoiding stress to the joints and bones. If it turns out to be a more severe grade, like a 3 or 4, they might opt for surgical intervention, which would involve cutting the inferior check ligament, in addition to the management of the increased schedule, the tighter schedule, and then the ratios and angles and all that.
So with the club foot, basically, normally with the horse's hoof, we see a lower heel, but with the club foot, it's going to be...
The heel is taller. So in a horse's hoof, you want the pastern...
That was my hoof, by the way.
Oh, okay. You want the pastern hoof angle to be the same, parallel. And in a club foot, the hoof is steeper than the pastern angle. We call this a broken forward angle. This is the uprightness, steepness, boxiness is a term, boxy foot, I've heard. Interesting that the lady who asked the horse has 1 foot, and then the community commenter has 2 feet.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is it common to be in 2 feet?
It can be. What I just learned at a symposium I went to recently, the Northeast Association of Equine Practitioners, is the person who spoke said, don't get so focused on the club foot itself, but when a horse has a club foot, or in this case 2 club feet, the other feet will be affected too. They might be, instead of having an angle this way, they might be broken back to compensate. There's some compensation in the body going on for the 1 or 2 feet that are clubby.
Got it.
So you got to pay attention to all 4 feet.
Because it's not just like the look of the hoof, but the structures inside the hoof are being affected.
Exactly. And we used to think about this as being contracted tendons. So it's the deep digital flexor tendon that is pulling on the coffin bone and changing that coffin joint. But now we know that there's more structures than just a tendon affected. They call it the musculotendinous unit.
Okay.
So the whole back of the leg is affected and pulling that shorten.
Which is then going to affect the movement of the entire limb.
Yeah, and can lead to the discomfort and the performance challenges and the not life expectancy, but career expectancy, career span. Yeah.
Okay, so continue to work with your vet, your fair, kind of get on the same page, get radiographs, and kind of figure out what your time frame for your horse's trimming cycle is going to be, and kind of manage their comfort and gauge it from there.
Yep.
All right. So on to question number 5. This was submitted by Deanna on Facebook, and Deanna wants to know, can you explain the difference between a complete feed and a ration balancer, and if one is recommended over the other for horses starting training?
Boy, can I.
One of your favorite topics.
Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Okay, so we finished one about the multivitamin mineral supplement, and I would call this the bottom rung of my equine food pyramid. Because if you have a really high quality pasture or hay, then maybe all you need are some vitamins and minerals to bridge the gap between what the horse requires based on the NRC nutrient requirements of horses and what they're getting. Okay, done. Then the next one is what she asked about, the ration balancer. That's this one, if you hold that. This is the Buckeye brand Grow and Win, and this is 1 pound, and it's a really good smelling
it does smell pretty
pellet.
good.
Yeah, and it makes a satisfying sound if you drop it with your scoop from high onto the horse's feet, so they feel like they're getting something and they're not missing out when everybody else in the barn is getting something. We traditionally feed this, well, it has vitamins, minerals, and protein.
Okay,
so the next step up from this.
Yep, just vitamin minerals, and now we add in protein for this one.
But not so much calories, because it's for the horse that doesn't need calories. So the easy keeper, or the one that's not doing much work. Now she said she's starting a horse in training.
Yes,
so this might not be the perfect feed. The next step then is a fortified grain, also called a concentrate. This is a sweet feed, so it probably feels a little sticky.
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah, so it's got the nutrients are vitamins, minerals, protein, calories, generally in the form of simple carbohydrates or sugars and starches. And for some horses, that's not appropriate, although others need those calories because they're starting in training. They're doing work.
So if you have a horse who maybe is a little bit on the easier keeper side,
doesn't need calories, doesn't need this, stick with this.
Got it.
Or a horse that just doesn't do well with sugars, so a horse with PSSM, polysaccharide storage myopathy, or a horse that just gets silly with sugar. I mean, like this is Pixie Sticks for horses, right?
Yeah.
So it just doesn't do well for everyone. The next feed I think she asked about was
the complete feed.
The complete feed, and I don't think we're going to set this one up, but we'll just maybe.
I'll try.
Okay, this is 16 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the complete feed, and it's this color because it's beet pulp based, and it's like hay and grain in a bag. So for the horse, the older horses with bad teeth, horses that can't have hay because of, say, a respiratory allergy. This provides their forage and their nutrition. So it's got the vitamins, the minerals, the protein, the calories, and the forage. This is everything.
Got it. So this is like maybe senior horse who can't eat as much hay due
or
to the
can't
teeth.
eat the long stem forage. They don't have the teeth for it anymore, and they ball it up in their mouth and spit it out. They're quitting, you know. So this is everything they need. But 16 pounds is all they would get in a day. So a 50-pound bag is going to last you 3 days. And then, but you can't feed this much at once. You would feed it in, say, 3-4 feedings, and you might even soak it to make it even easier to eat, sort of a gruel.
I was going to say 16 pounds, you'd have to split it into.
Well, it's not a grain.
Yeah.
It's hay and grain. So, but it is bulkier than the forage that you take in and chew. When it's forage, as long stem forage, they have a lot of chew time, and so it goes through the digestive system at a slower rate. This is going to go down much faster because they can just chew and swallow next. So yeah, but if you divide this up into, say, 3 feedings of 5 pounds each, that's perfect. So for her, she could start with a ration balancer, and then if the horse is not maintaining weight or energy for performance, then move up to the fortified grain, wherever that went. So
Sorry.
you kind of have to, and when you read the bag, and you give what it says, and then you can adjust up and down. You don't have to stick with just the bag. That's your guidelines of where to start, and you adjust based on what the horse is telling you, which means you have to body condition score.
Yeah.
That's a different
Another
video.
favorite of your topics.
And use the weight tape and look how your horse's attitude and performance
I'm
are.
going to put this one down.
Yes, that looks very heavy. Good job.
Ugh, thanks.
So, yeah, but that's the multivitamin, the ration balancer, the fortified grain, and the complete feed in order of the nutrients they have and what they're used for.
So since her horse might be an easy keeper, it's just starting out, you want to start?
I would start with the ration balancer, and if the horse shows you that he needs more calories, then I would go to the fortified grain.
And add in the fortified grain, and
I would switch to the
Yes.
fortified. I tend not to combine products because manufacturers make them for specific purposes, and when you combine products, you don't really know if I'm feeding a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. You don't know what they're getting as far as the vitamins and minerals and proteins. So just feed one product, and when you do switch gradually.
Yes.
Over 7 to 10 days or even 2 weeks.
Highly
No
recommend.
hurry.
And how much of the fortified grain do you feed
Oh, so
typically
this
per
is
day?
probably, this is 2 or 3 pounds. Sometimes it can be as much as 5 or 6 or more pounds. There's different grades, I guess, of fortified grain. Some of them are very concentrated in their energy. They're very energy dense. And so you might only need to feed a few pounds, but if you have a horse in really heavy work, a racehorse, might need 6, 7, 8 pounds of it. And the rule of thumb is no more than 0.5% of body weight. I know math. So as an example, a 1,000-pound horse should really get no more than 5 pounds at a meal.
Okay.
So if your bag says and what you're doing, your horse says, I need more than 5 pounds of grain a day, you have to divide it up. So like 3 pounds in the morning and 3 pounds at night.
A little breakfast, lunch, dinner situation.
Perfect. Yep.
Perfect. Well, I think that's
We did it.
we have a lot of blogs though on our website and referring to grains because it can be kind of an overwhelming topic, and you've definitely done a lot for us over the years. It's kind of breaking it down and explaining it of how it goes. Well, perfect. Well, that's it for our questions for this episode.
Okay.
But we will need your questions for the December episode, which is coming up
Christmas
shortly. I know. And you can submit those questions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, our blog, Twitter, or our form at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. But you can always ask your questions anytime using hashtag AskTheVetVideo. And
Wait, if you think of something, it pops into your head.
middle of the
You can
night,
ask it.
pops in the head,
Yeah.
go for it. Any questions received before Friday, October 26th will be eligible for our next episode.
Cool.
And if your question was answered in this video or one of the previous ones, make sure to reach out to our customer care team at CustomerCare@smartpak.com so you can redeem your gift card.
That's right.
So until next time, subscribe and have a great ride.